He promised himself for the 1000th time that he would get himself in order, but these thoughts came only in the morning, when he was going to work, and in the evening he came home with a bottle of Belenka, drank it quickly and went to bed. He had been living like that for a year, maybe a little more, since Natasha had left him for a better life in the city. Girls didn't give him a pass because he was a good-looking guy. Besides, he worked on a farm, as it was now fashionable to call the former collective farms that had suddenly become private estates. Vasiliy earned very well. And all because he was considered almost the best tractor driver and combine harvester. There was no machine on which he could not work well. The men sighed and said that Vasiliy could handle any metal. Nobody thought that after graduating from the institute the guy would return to the village, but he did. He built a big house, worked like a leper and did not look at girls, having decided to get on his feet first, so that he would not be ashamed to bring his wife home. From childhood he understood what it was to be malnourished and sleep-deprived, because his grandmother saved firewood and the house was very cold. He pampered her a lot, bought her outfits that the village had never seen before. She didn't do housework because her hands were skinned. Because it was hard and many other things, because Natasha was happy. So they lived like that for 3 years. And then one day the wife said to Vasiliy, "How long are we going to sit here? All people develop and move to the city. Well, of course, I don't want to spend my whole life in the country. I hope you're not going to force me to do that." Vasiliy raised his eyebrows. "I don't understand. I don't understand. You've lived in the village all your life. You've lived here all your life. Where are you going to live all of a sudden? Especially now it's possible to live well. Wait a minute. I'll put water in the house. It'll be like a city flat." Natasha stood up and paced nervously round the room. "God, you're so impenetrable." Then, of course, they made up and never spoke again. 3 weeks later, coming home from work, he did not find Natasha at home. On the table there was only a note saying that she had met a man who understood her and with whom she would live in the city. Natasha also wrote that she had taken the money that Vasiliy had hidden in the box and wrote that it was compensation for spending her best years on him. From that day on, Vasiliy changed his lifestyle. First he sold off his entire household and then he demolished his house. He went to work, but he had already received a couple of reprimands for drunkenness. So he did not answer. Just on the day when the boss talked to him, he took not half a liter, but 2 liters at once. Vasiliy sighed and looked around again. Oh, how he wanted to close his eyes to all this. He had even started to tidy up a couple of times, but the first time he'd stumbled on Natasha's hairpin and the second time on their wedding album, so he'd given up, gone outside and shuddered. The frost was so frosty that his nose was stinging again, and he'd had to work hard to start the tractor. I had a bet with the boss that the watchman didn't heat the garage. "I'm sorry," he shuddered. It was still dark outside, and he hadn't expected to hear an unfamiliar voice at this hour. Even in his own yard. He turned round sharply. In front of him stood a woman or a girl with a child huddled against her back. "What are you doing here at this early hour, in this cold, with a child?" The female figure shrugged her shoulders uncertainly. "It just so happened you don't know if there is anyone here who could shelter Vanya for a while. Vanya is very tired, but we have no money." Vasiliy tried to look at her face, but she seemed very young. Although he could be wrong, knowing the people of his village, he could guess that they would rather go to the police than to some vagrant for shelter. He looked at the child clinging to the woman. The boy was no more than 5, then looked at his watch. "No, it won't help if Vasily's late. Everyone will think he's been drinking." He slipped his hand into his pocket and pulled out the house keys. "Here, please, come and see me. I'll be back after 6. The house is warm. If you're cold, you can heat up the cooker. There should be food too. There must be. God knows what it is. But I'm a mess. I don't have time to go outside. Keep your head down or you'll get a lot of questions. I have to run, there's no time." He handed the keys to the strangers on horseback and rushed down the lane towards the garages, somehow not even thinking that strangers wanted to steal from him. The day flew by quickly, but the worry came in the evening when he turned to the shop out of habit, but didn't stop to pick up his usual half-liter, though he added some sweets, not sure if they were still waiting for him. maybe there was a light on in the house. It was so unusual that Vasiliy felt a kind of tightness in his chest. He cautiously went to the window and looked into the house. Vasily's face stretched. He saw only part of the room, but it was enough to understand there was just perfect order. Everything was so smooth and clean. On the sofa under a plaid sat a young woman and a boy. They were looking at some book. Vasiliy looked closely and sighed sadly. Once, when there was still hope that Natasha would give birth to him, he bought all the children's books. He had bought up all the children's books. And now they were dusting in stacks on the floor by the sofa when his wife left. When he came in, she blushed. "Hello, I'm sorry, Vasiliy and I were doing chores. I cooked dinner." Vasiliy was confused himself. He hadn't realized that the tramp he had pitied in the morning could turn out to be a very beautiful young woman. "I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't have refused." Like a hungry woman, she rushed to the table on the bed, while Vasiliy undressed and approached the boy. Vasiliy smiled and carefully extended his hand. Ivan extended it. Barely noticeably nodded her head. Only then the child took the treat. Vasiliy sat down at the table, inhaled the aroma of hot borscht and even squeezed his eyes shut with pleasure. Only after the plate was empty looked at the guest who waited for his words. It was unrealistically delicious. She smiled. "Thank you, we should probably go. We're already overdue." Vasiliy raised his eyebrows in surprise. "And you're in a hurry?" "No, there's no hurry." Nastia, that was the young woman's name, came out of the room where she had been tucking Vanya in for an hour, and sat down at the table. Vasiliy got up and poured tea for her and himself. She thanked him and looked at him with huge blue eyes. "You don't think we're idle?" "We're not idlers, it's just that one day everything went wrong. I went to school and made a very big mistake, trusting one guy." "No, I don't mean anything. No, I don't regret anything, because I have Vanya, but I had to go back to the village to my mum, who was married to a young man at that time. Mum was not happy about my return, as I later realized, because of the young husband. Vanya was born. Everything seemed to be more or less normal, but I couldn't get a job because Mum took on me the whole household. He was too old and I fit him much better. I sent him away. I'm sorry, but somehow my mother found out about everything and decided that it was all my fault because I was tailing her. And my own mother and my stepfather decided that they didn't have enough of my Vanya for a full-fledged family. And I should be kicked out. My mother said I should be deprived of parental rights at least once. 2 jobs I don't have. I'm sitting on their backs. The rest can be worked out. I ran away with you, but I'm sure they'll be looking for us. My mum won't just calm down. My mum won't just calm down." Vasiliy twirled his spoon thoughtfully. "That's what, Nastia. Live with me while we work something out. I'm hardly ever at home, so you won't embarrass me. And I'll find out what's what in a week." Vasiliy even forgot that he used to drink in the evenings. Now he was cooking something together with Vanya, and they were reading together. The house was clean and warm. Nastia spoilt them with delicious dinners, exactly the kind of life Vasiliy had always dreamed of. After 2 hours Vasiliy turned pale, but Nastia and Vanya were there, and he ran home. Natasha sat on the sofa in a beautiful pose and looked at him, offended by the inclement weather and the fact that Vanya was not where they were. Natasha took offense and pressed her lips. She did not understand. "Where is the joy of our meeting?" She was confident in herself and her charms. Vasiliy in 2 steps covered the distance to the sofa and jerked her up. "I asked where they were," she shrieked fearfully. "How do I know? Let's go somewhere." "I don't know, home, I guess." Vasiliy let her go, rushed to the door and stopped on the threshold, "So that when I come back, your spirit won't be here." Natasha looked at him in surprise and realized he wasn't joking, but how could he be? She was sure Vasiliy would be happy to pay up. Vasiliy realized that an hour, maybe more, had passed. He almost prayed that the boss would still be around. He would take the equipment and let him go to jail. The boss was there. He listened to Vasiliy's rambling story and nodded at his jeep. "Take it. It has better off-road capability than your tractor. And speed." "Sure. Thank you, Sergeyevich. I'll be quick. Go ahead if you need help." Yes, I'll do anything to bring the man who brought you back to life. Vasiliy saw them under a tree 5 kilometers from the village and stopped abruptly. On his shoulder. She said that she was your wife, that you loved her, and she also said that people like us had no right to live. Nastya said many other things and thought only of what was not. When the flow of tears had subsided a little, Vasiliy said resolutely, tomorrow, I will look after you so that you do not do anything else, and Nastya did not object, but only pressed herself harder against him. Vanya smiled and asked if you would be my dad. Nastya's mother and her husband came to visit them. Well, hello, Vanya, get ready quickly, we have to go home. I hope they'll put this scoundrel in his place. Nastya turned pale, Vanya clung to her. Vasiliy stood up. Who are you that you enter my house without knocking? The woman threw a glance at him. Parents, these sang probably to you all kinds of chemistry. Told you do not believe any more words. For a minute became quiet, then the door slammed. It came out the young husband of the mother. She rushed after him. If you liked the story, please support me with a thumbs up button. For you only one click, but for me it is very important. Thank you.